Noel Gallagher's pedal board for the Oasis reunion tour had one of the rarest pedals in the world. It is the Cornish SS-2, and today I'm going to try and recreate that pedal with nothing but parts that you can buy on Amazon. I made one silly mistake that could have derailed this whole project. Now let's see if I got this pedal working and if it can sound like Noel Gallagher. So all of this come from Amazon. Can you believe it? This whole pedal and building everything with parts that you can buy. And actually, in the description of this video is going to be all of them parts. So if you want to make this pedal, you can get all of this straight from the description below. I'd love to hear if anyone's going to build this, especially if you're going to use these parts. So what have we got? We've got a large pack of pots. I bought, because it was cheaper for me to buy like a pack of pots rather than the individual ones, because I'm going to be building 4 of these pedals. You know, there's no point in me building one, so 4 of them. I figured I'd go with the packs of pots. That goes for resistors and capacitors. So we've got these cool little mylar caps, all of that. Get on. Then we've got some larger caps that I couldn't get in the packs. It was easier just to buy these. Although I've got to say these are a lot bigger than I was expecting, so they might be hard to get on the board. And then these bad boys are bigger again. I mean, look at the size of them. That's getting a little bit ridiculous. It's Nichichon though, a great brand. So I figured I'd use them anyway. Now, what else have we got? We've got germanium diodes. Again, Amazon, get on. We've got our strip board or perf board, whichever you want to say. I found this stuff. This is like a darker orange colour. It kind of looks more vintage to me, so I chose these. We've got some other smaller size rather than value, some smaller capacitors. They didn't come in a kit. The electrolytic ones, right? I could have bought a kit, but I wanted to get higher quality like the Nichichon ones and stuff, and I didn't want to pay for the whole kit. So, and last but not least, this is the only bit that it didn't scrimp, was the op amps. Now each of these, because Pete Cornish is a legend, each of these uses 2 op amps. It's a very odd drive, so I went with these. The most expensive op amps that I could find that was still within reason. So I'm not paying like 80 quid for an op amp or whatever. And they come with these, look, a gold pin little socket. So I thought that's a nice touch. I'll go for it. And how cool do they look? I mean, each one of these circuits is going to have 2 of these in. So that's at least something special. And I really love to hear if you do build this, if you went for these as well. I highly advise it. Why not? You've got to splash at least on one thing. At the end of this, we're going to be comparing it to this. This is the Affordaboard Supersonic. It's an absolutely amazing pedal. I mean, it's in a Gorva enclosure. It sounds fantastic. It looks amazing. Everyone knows I'm a massive Oasis fan. Noel Gallagher's one of my heroes. He's certainly one of my guitar heroes. And this is exciting. And I also know that my buddy Simon from JSA had some input into the design of this. And that man is a wizard. So no pressure, Joe. I've got to build a pedal. All right, my design is from Pete Cornish, who is also a legend and very sought after. And let's face it, I went to see the Oasis reunion tour. The last date, my wife is an absolute star. So she got me 2 tickets to go and see them on the Sunday, the very last day. And it changed my world. It's amazing. And I know that Noel had an SS-2 on his board. So I'm like, this has got to be good. I'm excited. If you can't tell, I'm way more excited than I normally am. But at the end of this, I'm going to pit it against this pedal because I know how good this is, and it's just a little bit of added pressure. Now, the other pedal that I've got to mention is the Scran from SoundLad Liverpool. We had Mark on our podcast not long ago. He is an absolute gent, and I know that the Scran sounds amazing from the videos of it, and I really wanted to buy one, especially as he's released like a Union Jack one. It looks amazing, but there's a 6-week wait. And for this video, unfortunately, I didn't want to wait. I wanted to film this because I'm excited. So this looks fantastic. The question is, what am I going to do to make mine look just as good? Well, you know, I'm going to use one of these enclosures, finished in green and star fabric with a metal Oasis badge on the front, the Union Jack. This is the fun bit. I want everyone to write in the comments a word or a description that I can use on the product listing for these, because there's going to be 4 of them, remember, for these on my web store. I'm going to suggest that the finish is called Rock and Roll Star. I
think that that's perfect. But I'd like to know what you guys think and whether you can come up with something better than Rock and Roll Star. Please write in the comments. Please let me know. And remember, there's extra marks for the silly ones. Craze Fandango, I'm thinking of you with the dad jokes there. Anyway, let's get on to it.
When I was 10 years old, my mum managed to copy a cassette from one of her friends' kids of What's the Story, Morning Glory. I literally wore that cassette out. The tone, the attitude, the melodies, it just knocked me for six. So when the tickets come about for the Oasis reunion tour, oh my word, I was so excited. And my wife spent 2 days trying to get me tickets, to no avail. She couldn't get them. And then she won a competition that entered it into a prize draw to be able to buy tickets, and I managed to get two. So me and my friend Todd from the band Valentinos and Guitar Knobs managed to go over and watch Oasis on their final gig at Wembley. It was amazing, life-changing. Honestly, I don't think I've ever been to a gig like it, and I don't think I'll ever see anything like that again. If you can't tell, the hairs are standing up on my arms just from thinking about it. It was amazing. And I even got myself a new tattoo. Sorry, Hayley, my wife is absolutely fuming about that. Now, if you want to buy this clone of this pedal, you can head over to HelloSailorFX.com. Thank you everyone who buys pedals, because it really does help keep this stream alive. I wouldn't be able to build these pedals without you guys buying them. But if you don't want to buy a pedal, you can find all the parts for this build in the description below with Amazon affiliates links. I do get a little bit of a kickback, but no extra charge to yourself, and you'll be able to buy all the parts that I used today to build this pedal.
Now, to mark this out, we're going to count 18 holes across and then mark the 19th hole, because remember, we need 18 holes. If you look at our drawing here, you can see 18 holes along the top, and if we were to count 18 and then mark, we'd be 1 hole short, and I cannot tell you how many times that I've done that. Move over to the 19th hole, and then I'm just going to mark that with my screwdriver. Now we have 15 holes going down. 15, we move to the next hole along, and this is going to be the one that we mark. So right here on that W there. Perfect. Now we have seen lately I've been using my Stanley blade to cut these, which is an interesting way of doing it, or you can use a hacksaw blade. Now the story behind a hacksaw blade that I'm sure I've told a million times, but people still seem to comment on it, is that in the Navy, on board a warship, when we have this amazing workshop, it's fantastic, but no one looks after it. And if you go to the hacksaw drawer and open it, you're either going to find loads of hacksaws and 0 blades, or loads of blades at the bottom and 0 hacksaws. So I've kind of got used to just using the blade because that's usually what's available. In fact, towards the end, I probably just had one of these shoved in my overalls pocket at all times, and I just used it. So that's why I don't use a handle. Now, when you're using this, if you do go down this route, firstly, well done for being an absolute rebel and copying me. I would advise not to cut the top. What I would do is flip it over, and we know we're going in this row here, and I would cut the bottom. Reason being is, if you slip and mark the bottom, no one's going to see it. It doesn't matter because the pedal sits that way up, or the circuit does anyway. So if you mark the bottom, it doesn't really matter. Turns out these actual Vero boards or perf boards, strip board, whatever you want to call it, these are actually really good quality. They're quite thick. They're not as flimsy as some of them. I'm really impressed. Anyway, let's get cracking with this.
Now this is where most DIY builds go horribly wrong. I know that my first 20 pedals did not work, mainly because of this. It is of course the strip board. Trust me, any tiny slip, any wrong hole, and you are messed up. The dream of building something that does the Oasis crunch will turn into complete silence. Hopefully this video will help you avoid all of them pitfalls, and you can get a working pedal at the end. Let's go ahead and navigate the strip board.
As we all know by now, this is the bit that I absolutely despise. It is marking out the holes. So it's a little bit of counting, and if anyone knows me well enough, they'll know that I despise maths or anything to do with numbers and counting. So let's start off in the top row. First of all, I did find my Schneider permanent marker. I will try and link this in the description for an Amazon affiliates link if anyone wants to buy one of these. I really like this type of pen because when you mark the hole, the ink wicks through so you can see it from the other side when you're marking it. Now I know a few people have suggested that I could flip the picture around on my phone 180 or whatever, like over on itself, and then I could just mark out the bottom. I get that, but my brain just can't take it. I can't figure it out. I prefer to just do it the simplest, most analog way where I can see what's happening in like the right way round. I just can't do it. So we're going to start off in the top row, the 4th hole along, 1, 2, 3, 4. This one here, we're going to mark that because that's our first cut. Now, one thing I have noticed with this strip board or Vero board, whatever you want to call it, is the holes seem to be just a tad thinner than any others I've used. I don't know whether that's just in my head, maybe it is, but it's something to bear in mind because we're going to be shoving some pretty big components through it. But we all know I like a challenge. Right, so there's our first one. And then if we go from the other end, the 3rd hole along, 1, 2, 3rd hole, that is also marked off. As I'm doing these, I know that the 3rd hole along there is going to have 2 open spaces. So I'll count them out, 1, 2, just to double check. It's always worth checking your work on this one, on any pedal really. Now, if we move to the next hole that we're going to look at, I see that that's 1, 2, 3, 4 along, and then 1, 2, and it goes in the 3rd hole down. So 1, 2, 3, 4 along, and it goes 1, 2, 3 in the 3rd hole down. Right, so all I'm doing there, it sounds like mumbo jumbo, like if anyone's ever watched Peter Kay with the sketch where he talks about the old woman in the shop counting change, going your 1s, your 2s, your 10s, and then just gives them the number. It's kind of like that.
I give her a £10 note, right? She give me change. She went, there you go, love. 7 on 8, you want your 2s, you want your 5, 10, 50, and 10's your chair. I said, hey, what's that you saying to me? What's that?
Thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate the support. I hope that you get value from this content. If you get value from this content, can I ask a huge favour? YouTube have this new function called hyping. I'm not down with the kids. This is all new to me. But if you're on your mobile phone and you scroll to the messages, instead of clicking on the messages, if you swipe, it gives you the option to hype this video. I'd really appreciate it if everyone could just press that hype function and see if we can share this to more people. Thank you.
So what I'm doing there is I'm counting 4 on the top row from the last mark I made. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm counting 3 down from the top. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm in. So I know that there's going to be 4 there. Yes, there is. And then 2 there and it goes in. Perfect. So all the time I'm counting as I go. So the next holes I'm going to put in, if we look at our drawing, there's 2 open holes and then it goes into like 2 cuts on top of each other. So if we look here, you have 1, 2 open holes, then there's 2 that go into each other. So 2 on top of each other, so they say, not going into each other, like this. So what I'm doing is I'm using my last mark to make the next mark. And now when we go back to our drawing, I can see that if we move down sort of to the next row and then over the column, we've got another 2. So we can just add them in. 1, 2. You see how I'm doing it? I like build the picture out from the top down and just count all the holes across. I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of these marked out. Then, once they're marked out, I'm going to take my Stanley blade, get told off by everyone on the internet because people hate me doing this. Probably more than any other bad practice that I do is this Stanley blade. But you know what? It fulfills my soul to do it. I don't want to use a drill bit. I have got a drill like a whatever. I like doing this. What I do is I make sure that my Stanley blade is going into the right hole and I can see that it's the right hole because the pen's wicked through. And then all I do is just make a circular motion, and as I do the circular motion, the blade cuts out a groove in the copper and therefore makes a space between this part of copper here and this part of copper here, which separates the circuit. So anything on this side will be one part of the circuit and anything on that side will be another. And I'll just, after I've marked it out, I'll just go through and do all of them. Once you've done that, the best thing to do would be to go through and count how many cuts you've got on your board and how many cuts are on our drawing. If the 2 numbers match up, Bob's your uncle and we're in for the winner. That's all of the holes marked out and cut out. Next we're going to go into the link wires. Now for the link wires, I advise that you save your component legs, or you can buy a reel of uncoated wire. I'll have a link in the description to the one that I usually use. But today what I'm going to do is, because I've cleaned the workshop and I've got no legs and I can't find my uncoated wire, I'm just going to use some old resistor legs. Now the first one we're going to put in is, it goes right over this cutout here, and it lands next to this cutout here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my leg, bend it over on itself. I'm going to put one half in here where I can see, if we look at our drawing, you can see that the link goes in sort of in the crest of these two holes. And then it also goes right the way up to the top in the same column and jumps over this cutout here. And there is 1, 2, 3 holes in the middle. We can see 3 holes in the middle on our drawing. So I know I've got it in the right place. And I'll just push that down and flatten it out. Now on the other side, all I have to do is take my trusty Hakko. And I do advise everyone to buy a Hakko because I bloody love them. I know there's more modern, newer, fangled things out there, but they just don't work for me. We actually went to see Marcus Reeves. Well, so the whole story is, I went to see Oasis with my mate Todd, who is of the Guitar Knobs podcast. If anyone doesn't watch that, you should be watching it, or listening to it, should I say. And he's also in a band called the Valentinos. Absolutely amazing guitarist. Anyway, we travelled around the UK doing some cool stuff while I was here for a week. And we ended up in Kettering to see Marcus Reeves, of all people. We went out for a meal. It was fantastic. And Marcus has the most amazing workshop and setup. Like, truly, it's amazing. It's inspiring. But he has, like, the most modern soldering irons and all this jazz. And it just doesn't work for me. I prefer to use the Hakko. One thing I did note from my travels is a lot of people, especially in the guitar community, are saying to me that I should do some sort of Patreon and have some content behind a paywall where people pay a couple of quid a month or whatever and they have access to it. On board a warship, you find these chiefs who are definitely not me, because I am not that person, but you find some chiefs who kind of hoard information. They become amazing at fixing this one thing, or they have all this knowledge about something and they don't teach anyone it, they don't show people it, and that makes them indispensable to the department and therefore really important. For me, in a warfighting situation, and I realise pedals aren't warfighting, right? But in a warfighting situation, if the worst happens and that person gets taken out, all that knowledge goes with them, and that's unacceptable, because we want to fight and we want to win. So I train all of my guys up on as much as I can, and I try and develop them as much as I can. And putting something behind a paywall kind of feels like that to me, unless you're going to take the time to do proper lessons. Now, I know that Marcus Reeves does some proper lessons behind a paywall, and to be honest, I would pay for lessons from him, so that makes sense. But I'm not going to do anything other than just make these videos, so it seems disingenuous for me to put anything behind a paywall. I mean, the way that people support me and the way that my channel keeps going is people buy pedals from me. That's what supports me. So if you want to support Hello Sailor, please just go to my website, hellosailoreffects.com, check out my pedals, and if there's something cool, buy it. Let's go ahead and add in some others. The next one we're going to add in is right in the centre, and you'll notice that it looks like a black line that goes from the top over here right the way to the bottom. But somewhere in the middle, there's 2 blue dots. Now, what these blue dots mean is that there are 2 legs going into that hole. So the link wire goes into that hole and out of that hole again, so it's soldered in there. So on this one, there's actually going to be 4 solder points, 2 in the middle and 2 at the ends. So let's start that off. We'll have our first leg here. Now I can see that that goes in just above this double cut. Fine. So if we bend it over, I'll put it in just above this double cut, and it goes down to level with the bottom of the next double cut there, and there are 3 holes in the middle. 1, 2, 3 on our drawing. That means I've got it in the right place. So I put that in. That's great. Now the next one I can see does pretty much the same thing. So if I get my disused component leg, obviously you'll be using ones from previous builds, or the uncoated wire. I suggest you buy the one in the description, because that means that I get a kickback. No extra charge to yourself. How's that for a good little plug? So now this leg goes into the same hole that our previous one went into. Then we missed 2 and go in. So we missed 2 holes, and then go in just before this double. Fine. Flatten that down. And then we've got another link wire coming out of that. So I'm going to use this component leg right here. See, the thing is, I've got an odds and sods resistor drawer with resistors that I haven't like tested or graded or anything, and there's just loads in there, so I might as well use them. So we go in the same hole again, and actually these holes on this Vero board are big enough to get 2 component legs in, so it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Now this one goes right the way to 2 holes left at the bottom, but that means that there's 3 holes underneath it. If we look at our drawing, 1, 2, 3, it's in the right place, so I'll just push that down. So this is quite a complex link wire because there's actually 3 link wires and 4 solder connections, which, you know, that's probably the most complex one I've built in recent times, but it's not too bad. Once you understand that them little blue dots mean that 2 wires go in there and not just 1, it's all good. There we are. Now I can just tidy them up, and that is the most complex part of the link wire system in place. It's time to move on to the sockets for our op amps. Now we're going to be using 2 op amps again. These are super expensive and super high end, especially as we're building this from Amazon parts. They come with their own gold pin socket, so I'm going to be using them. So we'll take them out and just leave our op amps to one side for now, because we won't fit them in until later on, just because I don't want to heat damage them. Now if we look at these sockets, we can see that there's a little cutout at the top here. Now that little nick tells us which end the dot is at. So on our op amp, we can see that there's a dot on one side. Great, that's where that'll line up with this nick. And the 2 op amps on this circuit look like the little nick is pointing to the top. Fantastic. So at the top here, we can see where it goes in, because there's actually 4 splits in our Vero to try and split the 2 halves of this. So it just slots in there, and there's 2 link wires underneath each one. Now normally this is a problem, but because these op amps are like uber high end, they actually sit quite far up off the board because of the gold pins. In focus there, see what I mean? They sit quite high up. The sockets that are normally used don't do that, and they would actually be quite difficult to fit in this situation. So I for one, I'm really glad that this come with these standoffs with these little sockets. Yeah, it's a nice little touch. And if you're building this with these sockets, you know that you're going to be able to fit your link wires underneath the socket without having to squeeze or bend or all the usual stuff that I have to do. Now I'm going to go ahead while it's upside down and just solder in each of these legs, being careful not to join 2 of them together. What I advise is that when you're doing this, you put the board at an angle to yourself. Most people that hold it square onto themselves. I put it in an angle so I can get into each one without fouling or touching any of the others. It's weird because everyone kind of gets their own little system for doing this stuff. Like for example then, I could have just crossed straight over the top and soldered these, but if I twist the board round, there's nothing in the way now. I can just get straight to them. That makes sense to me. And I suppose as long as they're soldered properly, it doesn't really matter how you do it. There we are. Now I'm just going to tidy this up by snipping the excess off. I mean, you don't really need to do this, but I just always have, so I'm going to continue to do so.
There, now it's time for the resistors. Handily, the Amazon kit that I bought has all the values we're going to need. Unfortunately, we're going to have to double up some of the resistors to get the values that we need. But that's okay, we can manage that, can't we?
Okay, so resistors. I bought this pack from Bojack. I really like the Bojack stuff. I've had a few people tell me they've had issues with them in the past. But for me, I've used their trim pots and stuff like that for a very long time, and I'm happy with them. What I am going to do is I'm going to start left to right, and I'm just going to pick the first value that I come to. I'm going to add all of that value onto the board, and then I'll move on to the next one. So the first one I come to is 510R, which is 510 ohms. If we look at our little chart, I'm sure on the inside here, it gives us a chart. Now, can we see 510 ohms? Here's ohms. There you go. It says 510. We actually have 25 pieces. So I know that if I go through here, I'm going to find a packet with 510 on. These ones, oh, look at this. So this is handy. They're all stapled together, but these are all ohms. Like, they're all below 10, up to 10 ohms. These ones here are 15 ohms to 56 ohms. Anyway, I found the ones that I want. They're right here. It's 510. So if I move them to one side, it's interesting, isn't it? What some people think are different brands, because I've had no problem with these, but then other people have told me they've had issues with some of the MOSFETs and stuff, which I've used. So I don't know. Actually, while we're here looking at our drawing, it appears that this is the only 510, so that's okay. Now this goes in the second column along on the top, and then it comes down with 4 spaces in the middle. So if we count them out with the leg, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it goes in. By my counting, it should go in at the same row as the top cutout in this little double here. So all I can do now is just push this in place. I'm going to make sure that the resistor body is sitting at the bottom, and that's because right next to this is going to be a 470 NF cap. So if I put the resistor body at the bottom, it's going to be out of the way of that cap. I mean, it'll probably squeeze in next to it anyway, but why not push it out the way if you can? So there's our first one in place. Let's give that a solder. I quite like this. It's therapeutic. It's kind of like painting by numbers, if you remember doing that as a kid. It's just a little bit like that, only for guitarists. There we are, and then once we've snipped these legs off, there. I'm just going to go ahead now and add in all of the resistors on the drawing one by one. So the next one's going to be 150k. I can see that there's a couple of them there, so I'll just add all of the 150k's to the board, ensuring that I count to the edges after putting each one in to make sure that it's in the right place. Same way as I did to cut the holes, and then we know we are exactly getting things right. It's always better to double check rather than make a mistake, because if you have to unsolder one of these, you can, but it's just fiddly, and especially if you don't notice until it's in the pedal. It's just a pain. Some developments then. First of all, I'm an absolute idiot. If you look at these resistors, I was looking for the 10k, and going down in order, you can see it goes 5.6, 7.5, 8.2, 15. And I was like, damn, it hasn't got 10k in there. I thought to check this. And I was pretty much stressing, thinking, oh, I'm going to have to add some resistors to the list. I wanted to build them off Amazon. And then I'd use some 10k resistors that I had in stock, which are vintage ones. And then I figured out, look at this down here, 10k, 50 pieces. I'm an idiot. So you do indeed get 10k's with the Bojack kit. So if you're building this from buying the parts in the description, you will have the 10k's. The rest of the pedals that I build, so numbers 2, 3 and 4, will all have these resistors in. But serial number 1 will have 4 vintage resistors in, just because I've already fitted them. And I don't really see the point in taking these out and wasting them. Now, if we look also, 6.8k on the bottom right hand side of our drawing is the one and only one of these. The kit doesn't come with a 6.8k, unfortunately, but it does have a 2k and a 4.7. If we add these in series, you get 6.7k. Now these are 1% resistors. I'd imagine that some pedals use 10% or 5% resistors and could drop as much as 0.1 or 100 ohms anyway. So I'm not going to worry about that, but I am going to use 2 different resistors here just to make one. And all we do is we take one of each, like so. I mean, if you don't like this, and I'm sure there'll be someone who comments on the video and says, Joe, you're an idiot, why didn't you just buy the right resistor? Yeah, fine, whatever. I'm showing you how to adapt and overcome. If you just put 2 of them together like this, so the bodies are level, point their legs toward each other on the top, and then just give it a twist like a helicopter rotor, which I absolutely despise helicopters, as we all know. But I call this the helicopter method. If we do that and then give it a solder, we've now made a 6.7k resistor. And, you know, these are 1% tolerance, which means that they can be up to 1% out from their original value, which means that we're not too far away. That's fine. And then to fit this, it goes into the second row up on just at the side this 1 meg resistor. And if you look at our drawing, it has 1, 2, 3 holes in the middle. If you count out 3, 1, 2, 3, the next leg goes in right by this cut next to the top pin of our op amp. And then all we have to do is just slide that down like so, and there it's in place. We'll give that a solder, and there's our 6.7k resistor fitted instead of a 6.8. I think that's not going to make any difference whatsoever in my mind. But it does mean that you can build this whole pedal from just buying the resistor kit, and you'll have loads of resistors left over for other projects as well, which is kind of fun. I mean, it's fun to build something just from Amazon, isn't it? I didn't think I'd be able to do it, but there you go.
Okay, so now we're on to the capacitors. Let me tell you that I went over the top with the size of these caps, but I always think that bigger caps look better and sound better. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you prefer bigger caps, or are you going to buy physically smaller caps so they fit in a pedal easier? I mean, it would be easier to build, but where's the fun in that?
Next up is going to be our capacitors. We've got these, a whole box full of different values, so I'm sure we're going to be able to find all of the signal caps that we need. One thing we do need to think of is our 22 microfarad capacitor and our 220 microfarad capacitors are massive. Could of course avoid using this massive Nichicon capacitor, but do you know what? It's a great cap, and Nichicon are a great brand, so I'm like, I want to use it. It's going to be fitted down in this corner, but one thing we need to be mindful of is that these are pretty big. I mean, this one I could probably hang it off the side of the board, no problem. But this one here, the 220 microfarad, is going to go up here. It's going to be right next to a 1 microfarad here, which are usually pretty big because, you know, the non-polar 1 UF caps, 1 microfarad caps are usually pretty big. So all I'll need to do is make sure that I deconflict. I'll leave them until the end because they're going to probably sit above everything, and if not, I could just run wires to them if not. So first up is going to be a 470 NF resistor, which is in our top left hand corner. And if we take our little drawing here, we can see that 470 NF. Where is that? There's 560, 470, and so the code is 474. If we come down to that part here, do we have a 474? Yes, we do. This is our first capacitor. Now, as you can see, these are all going to be pretty large, so it's going to be a bit of a squeeze, but I think we can do it. So this one goes in the third column along, right here, and it goes in the fourth row down. 1, 2, 3, 4. Fourth row down, and if I just manipulate I keep going to say resistor, manipulate the cap into place, it can sit hanging over the top of our board and out the way because there's loads of space in the enclosure. Again, if you're building this from Amazon parts, you could indeed just search out Amazon parts that are a little bit smaller or whatever, but if you want to use the ones that I'm using, I'd just buy the box from the link. If it was me, I'd just do this exact thing. You know what I'm like, I love big parts, so maybe you don't want to have big components in there, but I think it adds to the tone whether you like it or not. I mean, these aren't particularly boutique parts or anything, but they are like really well made ones. If you were going to buy a pedal with these in, like a new pedal, it wouldn't be a cheap pedal. It's not like it's, you know, mass produced SMD and anything like that. Right, there's our first component in. Next, just below that, we have a 4N7. It's labelled up as, that's a 4.7 NF. So back to our drawing we go here. 4.7 NF. Well, if after the point, so we have 0.4, if that's 400, that'll mean if we move across one, that's 40. We need to move across one again to get to 4.7 NF, which is a 472. So if we look in this top row here, we have 472. Now, just to prove the point, of course, I'm going to use my multifunction tester, which you can also buy off Amazon for about 15 quid. Again, there's a link in the description if you want to get one yourself. Now, our multifunction tester, we can actually test the values and make sure that what we're putting in is right. So this actually says 4829 PF, which is picofarad. So that's telling me that this is a 4.82 NF, because we move across one. So 4.8 NF, which is 0.1 out. That's close enough for government work, especially as, you know, the tolerance of all components aren't bang on, especially vintage ones. When you're getting to use them, you know, they're never exactly spot on. So if you look at our drawing, we can see that this one goes in just below this cut in the top left hand corner, and it has 1, 2, 3 holes open below it. So 1, 2, 3 open holes in below it, and it goes in one below our 1 meg resistor. And if we just slot that in there, it can go all the way down this one, because we've got a bit of a gap before we fit anything in this side, and we've got a 10 microfarad going in this side, so we can just about squeeze that in there, I think. It's all about deconflicting. When you're putting these in, it's worth looking at what's going to the left and right hand side of it, or top and bottom, and just making sure if there's a lot of stuff going next to it, that you bend it into a manner where it's sitting in the space. That's it. I mean, this is less prevalent if you're using smaller components, but who on earth wants to use smaller components? I feel like you're watching the wrong channel for that. Right, there we go. Now I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to add in all of the Mylar film caps from this box in order. I mean, next one's going to be a 10 NF, so just to show you, 10 NF, if 4.7 NF was 2 holes, well 10 is going to be the next one. So if we were to go to here, that would be 1 NF, wouldn't it? Because 4, 1, so that would be too low. So we move across one, which is here, 103. So if the first column is hundreds, the second column is tens. So this 0.01 UF is 10 NF. That says that it's a 103. I mean, I know personally that it's 103 because I've built loads of them. And if we look at our thing here, we can see we've got 103. And that's going to go in right below the 470, literally straight in there. And it's going to go in one, miss a hole, and then in. So in, miss a hole, and in. This is going to be a bit of a squeeze, but it's all right. We can get it in there. I mean, actually, I'm going to leave this sitting high a little bit rather than trying to squeeze it down there, just because the legs are quite far apart. You'll have to excuse me. I feel like I've got a bit of a cold going on. Hayley was sick. My wife was sick while Todd was visiting, which wasn't ideal, especially as she had our daughter on her own there. And now I feel like I'm catching it off her, so fantastic. Just in time for the Woking guitar show. Right. There we are. There's our first 3 caps in. As you can see, I'm just going to go through and add them all in. So there's all of our signal carrying caps. Now you'll notice there's this one here that didn't come in the kit. I had to buy that separately. That is a 1 microfarad cap. It's non-polar, so it's massive. I mean, you could use a polar one and figure out which way round it goes, but what's the point? You might as well use the non-polar one. It is huge, but we got space in the enclosure. Now we're on to the harder to fit caps. Oh, actually, look at this. Let's look at our drawing. You can see up here there's a 10 PF cap. So a very, very small cap that I haven't fitted. I'm going to have to go ahead and order that cap. I'll let you know the actual one I use in the description so you can order the same thing. But I didn't notice that, so that wasn't in our kit too. Fantastic. Right, the ones that we do have are 2 10 microfarad caps, which are these here. I mean, you get a big bag of these, so if you buy this bag of caps that I bought, you get loads of them. So they'll do you for like loads of other projects too, which I think is pretty good. So we've got these 2. These should be easy to fit, and you know, because they're low profile. And then we've got our 2 massive ones. We've got the Nichicon, why I can't say that, I don't know. And then we've got this 220 microfarad cap. This one's going to be the hardest, even though it's not as big as the other one. It's still going to be harder because it's right in the middle here, and it's right next to this big beast. So it's polar, And we can see on our drawing that the earth points upwards. So the earth is pointing upwards. It's basically going to straddle this this split here in the next row along. The earth pointing upwards. So one row below the top is where the earth goes. Then we skip a hole and it goes in the next one. Now, I'm just going to rest it there and probably solder it on, because I want to be able to get my op amp in there, you know, and the op amp's pretty big. This is a bit of an awkward one. Now, you could mount it off board. What I could do is just glue it in the enclosure that way round and then run wires to it. That would be easy. Same with this one. But because we've got space, I kind of want to get them on the board. Now, one thing I need to check is if we take our enclosure, are we going to be able to fit this in there? That's an important one. So we've got our LED down here. I'm going to fit this right smack bang in the middle. So it should fit there so far, no problem. But if we fit this in, are we going to have the clearance for it to go in? So if I just turn it upside down, there's loads of clearance. We'll get it in. And same with this one. This one's a little bit closer because it's further this way towards me. And the enclosure's shallower there, but we could still get it in. So now we know that, we can go ahead and get this fitted. Now I'm just going to rest the body of this on top of the leg of this cap right now while I solder it in. And then I can just maneuver it out the way once it's soldered and stable. This is totally unnecessary. You could use a smaller cap if you wanted to, but go big or go home, right? Right. There we go. That's way too close to the op amp, I'm afraid. Don't! What you don't want to do is push anything so then it fouls another thing, because it's just creating a problem somewhere else, isn't it? Right, I think that might just get in there. What I might do is I'm going to go ahead and fit this op amp, right? So if we look at our op amp, there's 2 rows on the bottom of gold pin legs, rather nice, and our dot is in the top left hand corner of this row. So let's fit, if I bend it all out the way and fit this in place, I can kind of fit it all around it. I mean, I know I didn't want to fit these until later on, but I don't feel like I'm going to have a choice because I need to work around it. I don't have a 10pf ceramic cap that I ordered from Amazon like I should have. So I've kind of failed my challenge now, because this is a vintage Dubelier, Cornell Dubelier 10pf cap. It's a super expensive one. These domino caps are amazing. But I'm going to use this just because I've got it and I want to build this pedal. I'm unsure whether serial numbers 2, 3 and 4 are going to have this in, or whether it's just going to be serial number 1. We'll see. But this is going to go in the top left hand side corner, and all I'm going to do is just bend one leg over and I'll fit it to the flat side of the cap is fitted flat at the top here in this little bit of space, and there's 2 holes and it misses, and then it goes into the second pin of our op amp. I'm going to try and keep that like well out the way. It's not fouling the top of our op amp, which is good. So I'm going to go ahead and solder that in. And of course, we've got to fit our diode yet. Here's me about to solder wires onto it. I haven't even fitted the diodes. You could, of course, put these diodes on a switch or do some trickery with them, you know, so you can change from, because they're germanium diodes, you could change to silicon or no diodes and all of that. I'm not going to do that because I want to build the tone that Noel Gallagher had on his board for that awesome gig. There we are. It's not pretty, but it's going to work. Oh my god, this is getting ridiculous. Right, so onto the diodes. You get 10 diodes in this little bag, which isn't too bad. So that means you could build 5 of these pedals if you want to. I'm only building 4 of them. But it's always nice when you buy stuff for a project and then you've got some left over, because that means your next project you'll be able to use the same stuff again and you build up a collection. And that's why I've got a ridiculous amount of gear, or of components. Now these go in, it's symmetrical clipping, so they go in the opposite way round from each other. Now just before we put them in, I'd like to just test what forward voltage they have. So that's basically the strength of it. I mean, it doesn't say on the packet, does it? No, but they are 1N270, so if you've ever used them. To test the forward voltage, I'm going to use our trusty fluke. We put it round to the ohm setting, press the button twice, that puts it in diode tester mode. And then all we have to do is put it on, and we can see that it's 261 for this one. And then for the other one is 284. Now I'm probably going to go through them actually and try and find ones that are pretty matched. If I match them up, I mean, it's meant to be symmetrical, so I suppose if the forward voltage is roughly the same, then that makes it symmetrical, doesn't it? So 275 and 285, no, not quite matched up there, are they? I might have to buy another packet of these if I want to match them up. That's annoying. Let's see. Oh, I've got the leads the wrong way round so the diode doesn't conduct. 279 and 285, or 279 and 276. There you go. They're close to each other, and these two are close to each other. Happy days. I don't think that really matters, but it, you know, why not? If I can do it, why not do it? So these go in the gap between the two op amps over here. And I'm going to put them in the same way around as on the drawing, but it doesn't really matter, which means that the line is going to face upwards. So the cathode, I always mix that up. The cathode, which is the negative side on D2, is going to point upwards. And it fits in the row above this little split here, next to our link wire. And it goes in, misses a hole, and then goes in again. There we go. And if I just bend the legs out at the bottom, that'll hold that in place. Fantastic. Now our next diode. This one, you've got to make sure that you're bending over the leg that hasn't got the line on it, because we want it to go in the opposite direction. It really doesn't matter which way round you fit them, as long as they are pointing in the opposite directions. Otherwise, you're only going to be clipping one half of your signal.
Right in the middle of this gig, Oasis played my favourite ever Oasis song, and they dedicated it to one of my favourite boxers of all time, Mr. Ricky Hatton. What a legend. Honestly, this song absolutely blew me away. I did manage to film the solo, just so then everyone here can see what it was like, but let me tell you, the atmosphere in there was electric. You could have cut it with a knife. It was insane. Fair play to Noel and Liam. They absolutely smashed it. They got the right band members back together, and everything was just perfectly in place. I'll be amazed if they don't bring out another album. Let me know in the comments if you're excited about Oasis either touring again or bringing out another album. If they tour again, you better believe that I'll be front of the queue.
Next stage is going to be to add our wires. Now we can see on our drawing we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 on the left hand side, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the right hand side. So 10 wires in total. All I'm going to do is just pull out and snip 10 wires. 1, 2, I mean, real boring. And I'll go all the way to 10. And then all I do is I just take my snips, strip the end of the wire, give it a twist and a tin. A twist and a tin. There's got to be a t-shirt in there somewhere, hasn't there? Give it a twist and a tin so I've got the solid core at the top. And now I just look at the left hand side of my drawing and I can see that the second row down is a wire. So just put this through the second row down, bend the end over so it holds it in place, and then just solder it right there. There we are. Wait, there's not quite enough solder on there. And then when we snip the excess, voila. There is our first wire in place. I'm going to go ahead and fit the rest of them. Okay, now it's time to populate the enclosure. I'm going to go ahead and use a black DC jack socket, which I never normally use, but I think it'll go well with the knobs that I've got in mind. We've got our 3-pole double throw switch, input and output jacks. I'm going to go silver for this bezel over here, mainly because I think it'll tie in well with that. We've got, so for this particular pedal, you'll be able to see that we have drive is a 50k lin, tone is a 20k linear, and volume is a 10k log. So we've got 10k log here, and then in our little pack here we have 50k, where is it? There, 50k, and we also have 20k, where's that? 20k. So we've got 50k and 20k, there's 4 of each, and the reason why I picked this kit is because I'm building 4 pedals. So we need a 20k, we need a 50k, and we've got our 100k log here too. I'm going to go ahead and get all of this in the enclosure, and then we'll get some wiring done. So this is where we're at. We've got our tape over the 3-pole double throw switch to stop it getting marked up while we're working inside the pedal. I think it's looking pretty good, and I'm going to keep calling this finished Rock and Roll Star. Oh, let me tell you, Oasis sounded so good playing Rock and Roll Star on Sunday. Oh my word. I mean, all the way through it, me and Todd just kept looking at each other like, wow, we can't believe we're here. What a time to be alive. It was amazing. Yeah. So we've got our Oasis badge, our Rock and Roll Star finish, or whatever name you come up with. I've had to put the circuit side on, so rather than it being the way that it looks on the drawing, I've had to flip it 90 degrees because this cap's so big, if I use it down this end, it fouls the lid. I mean, it's only just about going to get through there. It's massive, what can I say? So next up, I'm gonna wire in all of the wires that are here. One thing I did notice, if we look at our drawing, you can see in this bottom left hand corner, we have controls for drive, tone and volume. But if we look at the actual circuit, we have controls for sustain, tone and volume. I've labelled this up as sustain just because I'm pretty sure that's what Pete Cornish did. He had sustain, so why not? I mean, there's no labels on the top. I'm going to choose some rather nice knobs that go with all of this anyway, and with this green colour, hint hint. If you can guess what knobs I'm going to use with this, let me know in the comments. First things first, let's get all of these wired up. So all I'll do is I'll start at the top, which is up here. This one here is 9 volts, this one here is negative. I'll just run them out to where they're going to go and solder them in, and then we'll stop and take stock and see what's left to go. There we have all of our wires in place from the board. I've also added in an earth bar here between our 2 input and output jacks. I've also run that round to the switch, so all of our earths are in place. Next up, we're going to wire in the output of our circuit, which comes from pin 2 of the volume pot. It's going to come round here, round this wiring loom, up round the back of our 3-pole double throw switch, up what I call a ponytail, which is just the wires going into the back of it, and to this front right hand pin. Now when attaching the input to the circuit, which comes from over here somewhere on the board, I go through this pin at the back here and then extend it to the front left hand pin, which is our input. And the reason why I do that is when the pedal is off, it connects the earth for our LED to the input of the circuit and thus making it quiet. I learned this from Marcus Reeves. He does these little videos that shows you how to, do certain things like soldering and whatever, and he does the Monday Minute, which explains what he's up to. It's just really interesting stuff. Even I, after, how long have I been building pedals for? Since like 2008, and even I can still learn something from him. Anyway, let's get this wired in. So this is going to go from this number 2 tag or pin on our volume pot, because that's the wiper, and that's usually the output anyway. I'm yet to decide what value resistor I'm going to use for my current limiting resistor on the LED, but I can tell you it's probably going to be 2 resistors, no doubt, just to get the length across to here. And I am going to use resistors from the kit, because from the ones I bought from Amazon, just because then it keeps it, an Amazon built pedal. I'm really hoping some people have a go at this, especially as all the parts are so readily available. I mean, to build the exact pedal that I've built here. You can get all the parts from the description, which I think that's awesome, because I think sometimes what puts people off is actually finding the parts themselves. And I get it, because you know, if you get it wrong, it's a lot of effort to wire up one of these things, then for it only not to work because you chose the wrong parts, or maybe people can't be bothered. Has anyone got any other suggestions for pedals to use to get the Oasis sound? Now, I know that Noel uses high watt amps now, and back in the day he used like the Wehrman and a Marshall valve state, believe it or not. Still say I'm going to buy a valve state. But has anyone got any ideas for other pedals to get the old Oasis tone? I'd be definitely interested in hearing that. I'm going to buy a Scran from SoundNod Liverpool. His pedals are fantastic. Right, there's that in place. Next up is going to be the input and output and the bypass. So because the pedal's upside down, left hand side is our input, this one here. From this exact tag, a wire is going to come round up the back of the ponytail to this centre pin here. That is our input jack. Our input pin. It either connects to the circuit or it connects to this pin here, which is going to be the bypass. So I'll run a small wire across to this pin here, which is our bypass, and that'll connect to this pin here, which acts in exactly the same way as this, remembering that this is actually 3 switches, 1, 2, 3. So this centre pin here on our output can either connect to the output of the circuit, or it can connect to this pin here, which is our bypass, and it's going to come back round through this wiring loom and come up to this tag here on our output jack. Voila! Then the only thing to wire in is our LED, but we'll get to that in a second. That's basically all the wiring done. All I've got to do now is add in the current limiting resistor for this LED. Before we get there, I'm going to go ahead and stick in as many cable ties as I can physically get in there. And I'm going to do this before I add in this resistor, just because the resistor is going to kind of get in the way. Now, to add the cable ties at this point, I don't know if I've ever shown this, maybe I have. I like to use my screwdriver, like a flat tip screwdriver. I have these Weir ones that someone suggested. You can get these from the Amazon affiliates link, as with anything else in the description. I was really impressed with this set. The small, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I have these really small, malleable cable ties. And all I do is I just hook my screwdriver underneath them, slot it under, and then I use the screwdriver to lever the tail, or whatever you want to call it, up. And I kind of get the worst part of this whole thing. So this bit over here is like the most unorganized part. So I'll get that in place first. And then all I do is I'll use this to be able to add in the rest of them. And I just build out from here, go this way and that way until the whole pedal's full. Now you can space them out loads if you want, but I like to space them fairly close together. Mainly because I think it looks better. And that is purely a superficial thing. I mean, you could put them any way you like. Anyway, you get the idea. I'm going to go through and add in all of the cable ties. There we have it, all cable ties in place, ready to go. I'm quite happy with how the inside of this looks. I mean, some of the components are ridiculous, but I love these op amps, and I love that we've got all these massive Mylar caps in there. Why not? So, now we're on to our current limiting resistor, and what I've decided to do, normally I use 10k, but in our kit, I'm going to use the 10k resistors, and I keep calling it a kit. What I mean is, in our pack of resistors that I'm using for these pedals, the 10k resistors are going to be used to build the pedals. So rather than doing that, using them, I'm going to use these 5.1k resistors, and I'll just join 2 of them together. That'll give me 10.2k, going from this tag here round to our floating negative on our LED. Not a problem. And then that will give us not very bright LED, because I prefer not to have it bright. If someone's playing live, it could probably get annoying, I'd imagine. I'd love to know what you think. How bright do you like your LED? Now, these aren't the ultra bright ones that I normally use, so actually now it's got me thinking maybe this is a bit aggressive. Okay, so what we're going to do is change my mind on the fly there. I'm going to use one 5.1k and one 470 ohm. That'll give us 5.5, 5.6k, something like that. That'll do. It's close enough for government work to what I want to do. And, you know, normally I have the clear, bright LEDs. So that means that, you know, a 10k resistor is appropriate. But I'm not using that today, so maybe it's not appropriate. Now, let's figure out what we're going to do here. I'm going to add them together like this. Same way as we did before on the board where we do the old twisty method. So I'm going to twist these together like so. Then we can give that a solder so it becomes one resistor. Great. And get rid of the excess. You don't want to cut it too low. Then I'm going to bend them out from each other. And then I'm going to add in probably some green heat shrink. That's just, I don't know, you don't need to add in the heat shrink, but I am. And of course I'm going to be using my my lighter and not a heat gun because I'm a heathen. There is a reason behind that, and I'm sure regular viewers will be aware of why I prefer a lighter over a heat gun. If not, please ask me in the comments and I'm sure I'll tell you the story. As we say in the Navy, I'll pull up a bollard and spin you a deer, which is just the Navy way of saying I'll tell you the story. Right, there we go. That is going in here. I'll give that a solder. Circuit ready to go. And if we flip it over, we can take this off and give it the test. Now this bit, I always run a power cable over and add it on, and if the LED turns on I feel like the pedal's going to work, but really all we're testing is that tiny little section where we fitted the LED. So it's not actually testing anything, but it does work. So that's a good start. Before we move on any further, let's go ahead and get our knobs in place. I went with the old Russian muff knobs just because, you know, the pedal's green. I think these knobs look perfect on it. Let me know what you think. Now, when I did fit these knobs, I did have an attempt at turning the pedal on, and there's bypass signal, but actually no signal in the pedal. We're getting signal out to the output of this resistor here when I touch it. I don't know if that's down to the op amps. Maybe I chose an op amp that doesn't work in here or whatever. Don't know. I need to get my audio probe out and give this thing a good probing and figure out what's going on. Okay, so I found a mistake I made. I am an absolute idiot. And this mistake is something that you could all make easily. Check this out. I've been using dual op amps. I originally thought that this thing used a 4558. And I was like, dual op amp, yes, we can go really expensive. We can buy a big bag of expensive op amps with all nice gold pins and stuff, which I will use in something, but not just yet. And then I was trying to test it with a different type of JRC op amp because I was like, I know they work, what's going on? And then when I went back to the drawer and had a little bit of a look, I noticed that it's an LM741 op amp. That's a completely different thing. Joe, you absolute idiot. So now when we go to the input, turn the pedal on, of course. Now go to the output. Of course, I absolutely got the wrong op amp. So I have added some LM741s. Luckily enough, I happen to have a box of Bojack LM741, so we can still do the Amazon build. Great. In fact, it'll probably cost you a little bit less. It is now, of course, time for the sound sample. We're going to hear how the SS-2 sounds with my Oasis Les Paul going into the Victory V40. But before we get there, I'd like to just say thank you to everyone who has bought pedals from HelloTaylorFX.com. It really does help keep this stream alive. I mean, I know a lot of brands offer paywalls and Patreon and stuff like that to get to their content. I don't do that, and I don't plan to do that. I'm going to put everything that I create out in the world, every long form video. But to help me do that, I need to sell pedals. That's what funds the whole thing. So thank you to everyone who's been to HelloTaylorFX.com, and thank you for everyone who owns one of my pedals. Now, as an added twist, we're going to hear the Affordaboard Supersonic next to the SS2. I mean, spoiler alert, the Supersonic is amazing. I really wish I'd have got a Scran from Sound Lad Liverpool. Mark makes the best pedals ever, and it looks fantastic.
but the waiting list was like 6 weeks long. 6 weeks? That's insane. Anyway, let's get on to the sound sample. Okay, so here we are with both of them plugged in. We've got the Cornish SS-2 and the Supersonic from Afforderboard. I've got to say, I'm really impressed with the Supersonic. It sounds fantastic. I mean, I think this thing's going on my board, put it that way. Anyway, let's hear the clean tone. So that is my Victory V40 along with my favourite delay, which is the Homebrew Devices Mimic 2. If you can still get them, I advise that you do. They're fantastic. And then also we've got a little bit of reverb coming from the Polyverbs. So let's hear how it sounds. And now the Supersonic. Now we're going to test how it cleans up. Messed that bit up. With the range master on for a bit of Live Forever. So here's the Afforderboard Supersonic with a range master. This is my clean tone. Now the range master. And then the Afforderboard. And now both of them together. In fact, let's change the song up. Okay, so clearly that's too gainy. like that.